understood doesn't have to be explained. The presumptive top overall pick in the 2025 draft, minted as such shortly after 8 Eastern. Cam Ward, tabbed as the franchise guy in Tennessee. CBS Sports' Aditi Kinkhabwala caught up with QB1 shortly after.
Cam, we've presumed this for quite some time, but now that it's official, what feels different?
That I finally can find somewhere to live now. I can start looking at houses, and I'm ready. I've been dreaming of this, and I'm glad I get to do it in Nashville.
Head coach Brian Callahan told us that from the very first meeting, he thought this might be a fit. When did it start feeling right for you?
Really after the season in Miami, when I found out when they had lost that game to Houston, they got the first pick, I knew it was destiny. Just seeing that team and what they went through just a year ago, I plan on, getting there and trying to change things around. I want to win a lot of games with those guys, and, I just want to be a good teammate at the end of the day.
In your conversations with Coach Callahan and knowing the quarterbacks that he's worked with, what are you most looking forward to?
Just learning more from him every day. I still got a lot to learn in the NFL and in my football career, but I'm doing it behind one of the best, offensive minds out there and one of the best head coaches out there. So I'm ready to get to work. I'm ready to sit with him, the OC, the quarterback coach, and, the defensive staff and learn what they do too.
Who's the first new teammate you've heard from?
The first new teammate, I would say C. Rid. I heard from him, Tony Pollard as well, and Lockett.
Is Ridley asking for the ball?
You already know he's going to ask for the ball, but I'll make sure I give it to him, though.
All right, perfect. Thank you, and congratulations.
Congratulations there in order for a dream realized by Cam Ward and 31 others in round 1 of the NFL draft. A look at your top 10, where the Jags trade up from 5 to 2 for the two-way star in Travis Hunter. Cleveland now owning the Jags' 2026 first and more. Ashton Genty becomes the highest drafted running back since Saquon some 7 years ago. Tet McMillan, your first true wideout, selected at 8 to Carolina. The goal always being, get out of the top 10 next season. Post-draft is presented by Geico. Switch and save. Get more with Geico. Joe Musso, pleased to be alongside our draft experts in Ryan Wilson and Rand Carthon. Fellas, long night, lot to sink our teeth into. And Rand, I want to go to you first here because you have an intimate understanding of that player and that place, the marriage in Tennessee. How do you like that fit? And how does Cam Ward start the process of going about fulfilling that promise of being the first overall?
I think it's a great fit, and you lean on Brian Callahan's experience in working with quarterbacks from young guys to the older guys, and he understands how to meet every quarterback at every point of their career in which they are. And so the next step for Cam is to get in the building, get situated, and then just put his head down and just go to work and spend as much time as he can with offensive coordinator Nick Holtz and quarterback coach Bo Hardegree and just learn this offense, get into it, and just also build a relationship and a rapport with his new receiving core. He hasn't worked with these guys, but you have a Calvin Ridley, you just signed a Tyler Lockett, and you're getting a Traylon Burks coming off of injury. And so you got those guys now, and now you know where you're going to be, and now you can start building a rapport with them.
Hey, Rand, let me ask you this. What's the biggest pitfall you want to avoid for a young quarterback? Because Cam has had success everywhere he's gone, like many young quarterbacks coming into the league, and it's going to be a different animal like it is for every quarterback coming into the league. And what do you need to guard against, not so much in OTAs or maybe even training camp, but once the preseason and the regular season starts?
Just overload with information. You don't want to overload them with information because there's going to be a lot to process anyway. And then the other trick to it is teaching him how to take the verbiage from his previous system and how to marry it with the current system, so there's a language there that you can help speak with him, and then also sprinkle in some things that are comfortable for him. And that's how Brian Callahan minds work. So I think it'll be a good marriage for those guys.
Information and expectations certainly at 1. Ryan Wilson, we had him at 1 for a while now, but as it is cemented there, and you take a look at Ward in that offense, the development, where does he need to grow fastest soonest?
That was going to be my follow-up, and we talked about this last year. And again, Joe, we all know that you're a Bears fan, but one of the things that Caleb had to work on early was not playing so much hero ball, which is what he had to do at USC because in part of the offensive line struggled. Same thing with Jayden Daniels, but it felt like the marriage in Washington was better for him with Cliff Kingsbury in terms of helping him have success early on. And I think that's the thing with Cam. He plays a lot of hero ball, and I would imagine he had these conversations throughout the process with teams asking him, why would you not take the check down here, and how are we going to get you to be able to take the check down at the next level? Because as you know, sacks are going to come fast and furious if you try to do too much every single play.
It became immediately apparent after that first overall pick that we were in store for some wheeling and dealing here in this first round as well, where The Jags trade up to 2 and land one man that plays as 2. How do we like this deal for both parties involved? Because, yes, you get the two-way star in Jacksonville. You pay a pretty penny. The Browns now positioned nicely with an extra first next year as well, Ryan. When you saw this trade on the surface, one that we heard mumblings of leading up to the draft, does it feel like there's a winner one way or the other, or both teams walk out feeling good about their side?
I think both teams win, but they win at different times, if that makes sense. And by that, I mean that I give Andrew Berry a ton of credit because there was certainly probably a lot of pressure on him because Travis Hunter is the #1 player on my big board, and I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. But the other thing, Rand, is that James Gladstone, the new GM in Jacksonville, gave up a first-round pick in addition to the second and a fourth this year to go 4 spots, and that feels rich unless you hit on Travis Hunter and you think he's going to be who you expect him to be.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think both teams walk away feeling great about what they've done tonight. James Gladstone steps in and you shoot your shot.
Yeah.
You go and get a guy that you truly coveted. And in a market like Jacksonville, which is seen as a lower market team, you get one of the most exciting players that have come into this draft in recent time. And now you have that to promote there. And then if you're Cleveland, you still sit at 5 and get a premium player for you and your defense to move forward, and you get the picks not only this year, but you get the picks next year as well.
Right.
How do you put a price on something that we haven't seen in a very long time? And we saw the price of it there as Jacksonville moves up to 2, Cleveland moves back, maximizes some of that future compensation. But the Jags got a nice piece there, whether they want to help out that defense, that pass defense that ranked near the bottom of the league last season, or roll them out there next to BTJ and get things going offensively. It's going to be exciting in Duval. The Giants, meantime, had the night they wanted to, kind of drew it up this way. You get best available there at 3, you get back into the first and draft what could be the quarterback of the future. How do you don't have to put a grade on it, but how do they grade out in your eyes tonight? This has to be a glowing success.
It's like we talked about this. We talked about this off camera, and if you were the New York Giants, you walk out of here with the pass rusher that you covered it, and that may have been the #1 player on their board. And then you move back into 2, you quiet the questions about the quarterback of the future, and you're able to get that. We've talked about it forever, it feels like, knowing that they were there at 34 and the possibilities of them moving back into the bottom of 1 to get a quarterback, and that's what they did.
All right, we don't want to get too far out in front of the story here, but they now have an interesting quarterback rooms on their hands, certainly with a couple of veterans there, Tommy DeVito as well. You have a head coach and a general manager, Ryan, that don't necessarily have time on their side. What is the management of this quarterback?
Fix. First year with Daniel Jones worked out, and then things went sideways, and now Daniel Jones is no longer there. And here's the other thing to keep in mind, and not to throw a wet blanket on the first day of the draft if you're a Giants fan, but historically when 2 quarterbacks or fewer go in round 1, the second quarterback taken almost never works out. The only exception is 2008 with Matt Ryan going first and then Joe Flacco. The other quarterbacks that have been drafted since then in a 2 quarterback only first round have been, I don't want to call it cringeworthy, but it's tough to look at in retrospect. So hopefully the Giants can buck the trend with Jackson Dart, but history is not on their side.
It's going to be interesting how they figure that out and develop a young quarterback in Jackson Dart at the same time playing with that urgency that they need to maintain those jobs. But you see there from Kayvon Thibodeau some excitement coming in from his teammates already there in New York. The biggest story perhaps, and there were quite a few of them, is the story that was not made, that being Shedeur Sanders sliding to day 2 of the NFL draft. Ryan, as recent as 2 months ago, we were talking about this kid as a potential 1-1. Now we're talking about day 2. How do you process it?
It's hard to process. Like I'm trying to find the words here, in part because, okay, Shedeur Sanders wasn't for everyone, and we knew that coming through this process. Some teams weren't crazy about the way he interviewed, and that's okay. But there seemed to be, and I think Rand would agree, that if Kenneth Grant were gone for the Steelers, they might give serious consideration to Shedeur there. They have a huge need at quarterback. It didn't happen. They took Derek Harmon, and that's the direction they chose to go. But I now don't know where Shedeur comes off the board because we've talked about the Giants trading back into the first round to get a quarterback. We knew that the New Orleans Saints like Jackson Dart. They now pick at 40. Do they like Shedeur enough to take him there? And if he gets past there and you get back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they don't have a second-round pick this year. So it may take future draft considerations if that's something they're considering.
I mean, for me, I don't get it. And I know that the game in the NFL has changed in terms of the quarterback position. There was a time where the dual threat quarterback, if you will, was not. And they were said that you have to be able to stand in the pocket, process, and play quarterback. But this is what Shedeur does.
The cyclical nature of the sport has turned us to the flip side of that coin now.
Correct, and we're talking about the all-time leader in college football history in terms of completion percentage. And that's one of the things that matters in playing the quarterback position. So, again, I really feel like at the end, he will go into a really good situation. And as if he was not already motivated enough to prove himself, he's going to be even more motivated now.
And you talk about a chip on the shoulder, and Pittsburgh perhaps reworking some things to get back into that second round, like you mentioned, but they were staring at him there at 21, and they instead go interior. We saw a number of defensive tackles, I believe 4 or 5, 3 technique types drafted here in the first round.
And one thing to add, and you have to take this into consideration when taking this quarterback, let's just say it is Pittsburgh. They figure out a way to get back in. Okay. Now you have a young quarterback who's going to be your future as a second-round pick, who after 3 years, if he plays well, you're going to have to go back and renegotiate and get that done versus taking him in one where you can kind of string it along with the 5th-year option and possibly even a franchise tag.
You also have to look him in the eye and say, we didn't love you at 21, but man, we moved back to 45 and we love you at 45.
I'm going to ask quickly, Rand, this. Do you think maybe there was any concern or trepidation or hesitation because the Kenny Pickett thing didn't work out in 2022 as a first-round pick? It felt like at the time that was a reach, and maybe they're wanting to be careful of crossing that bridge again?
I don't think, and this is no disrespect, I don't think you can put Shedeur's tape and Kenny Pickett's tape next to each other and say, oh, we don't want to repeat that mistake again, because it's not the same. It doesn't look the same.
Maybe you put Shedeur's tape and Aaron Rodgers' tape side by side, and you're looking at the immediate future of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Neither of those are currently Pittsburgh Steelers. We will make that here, just strike that into the record. We also have a running back come off the board as early as we've seen in the last 7 years, and Ashton Jeanty making his way to Las Vegas. Rand, my eyes immediately go to who's going to be the guy scheming things up here. We're not on the Smurf turf anymore. We're in Vegas, and we got to get things turned around quickly, and you have to do it for us. Chip Kelly is going to be the mind that moves this man. How do you like that marriage?
I love it, because if you look at a Chip Kelly's offense, it's always been about spreading the defense apart horizontally, and it's going to create those natural run creases in there when they get in those shotgun run formations. And so this is what Ashton Jeanty does. He gets the ball downhill, he hits it and he gets it, and then he's a tough tackle. So I like the fit, because there is a chance for him to, I mean, let's go back. He had 1,900 yards rushing after contact. And so now we got a player and a scheme that he may not get touched until he gets to the second level. So can you imagine, even if he got half those yards in the NFL, we're looking at a top 10 leading rusher.
Is this best case scenario for Ashton Jeanty's future to find his way to Las Vegas?
They desperately need help there, and you might say, well, they have needs on defense. Maybe the offensive line could have used some help here. I would just point to last year in the way Brock Bowers played as the 13th overall pick with a suspect quarterback situation, and he was literally one of the best players in the NFL, and that became clear a few months into his rookie campaign. So I think with the addition of Geno Smith, you talked about Chip Kelly, good to motivate players, as well as Pete Carroll has done over the entirety of his career. And then Ashton Jeanty, who is a great young man, could not have been more excited about landing in Las Vegas, landing in that program. And it feels like they're not going to win the division, but it feels like they're going to be competitive for the first time in a while.
Not long ago, we saw Josh Jacobs put the silver and black on his back and run with that thing. Ashton Jeanty going to be asked to do a lot of the same here with other needs still existing for Vegas. Gentlemen, great work as always. We got plenty more coming here on CBS Sports HQ after night 1 of the NFL Draft. Taking a look at your running backs selected in the top 10. Bijan was 8th overall, Saquon 2nd back in 2018. Ashton Jeanty heading to the Strip.
Cái đứa có ý khác thì nó bỏ rồi, nó bỏ mình rồi. Giải thích không giải thích được.
Nhưng mà rõ ràng. Buổi sáng hôm đấy tại ông hơi ớt tí là không nhìn.
Chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Ngày hôm nay mình sẽ tiếp tục hướng dẫn các bạn làm vòng. Và hôm nay của mình sẽ có tiêu đề là bún đậu. Bây giờ mình sẽ bắt đầu ăn. Tiêu đề của mình là mắm tôm. Bây giờ mình bắt đầu làm nha.
Tôi thấy ta đang định lúc ra đi đến rồi. Ta thấy con Phượng đứng ở đấy rồi, ta định dỗ luôn. Nhưng mà bọn trai nó gần đấy thôi, ta không dỗ. Mà ta đang định xuống đi thẳng xuống mua bánh mì để ăn luôn đấy. Còn mình luôn. Lại thấy con Hà đang dùng con tinh trước. Thế là không được rồi. không được rồi, tao mới chạy nghe cho con thật kẹo anh trai kia tao bảo đi xuống mua anh mình ra thằng nào tôi biết thừa phải chưa đi xuống mua tròn. Đây là đi xuống này đi có cái đường cái vườn hoa ấy thì con nào đi bên kia tao đi bên này. Thế là thôi